Think about your typical Sunday. Maybe you wake up late, go out for brunch with friends. You might watch the NFL, go to a movie, or do your weekly grocery shopping. You might spend the afternoon at Home Depot or Target, running errands, preparing for the week. For most Americans, Sunday is a day of activity of personal leisure, family time, entertainment, and, overwhelmingly, commerce. The only time this 24/7 commercial rhythm is broken, you might see it as a minor inconvenience. Or a cultural curiosity, like when you pull up to a Chick-fil-A and you're met with that closed Sunday sign. We see that and we think, oh, right, that's their religious thing. But what if I told you that Chick-fil-A's policy isn't a modern curiosity? What if I told you it's a ghost? A living relic of a forgotten America, an America where, by law, everything was closed on Sunday. Not just one chicken restaurant, but the grocery stores, the department stores, the post office, the theaters. And in many places, even the bars. This wasn't an optional religious choice. It was the law. These were the infamous Blue Laws, and they ruled the American Sunday for the vast majority of the nation's history. The 24/7 by anything anytime Sunday we know today didn't just evolve. It was the result of a long, bitter, and largely forgotten war fought in courtrooms, in state legislatures, and in shopping mall parking lots. A war that pitted ancient religious doctrine against modern. Consumer capitalism, personal liberty, and religious pluralism. Today, we explore one of the most significant and overlooked cultural shifts in American history. What were these Blue Laws? Where did they come from? And what really happened in the forgotten war for the American Sunday? To understand the Blue Laws, we have to go back to their theological source. And like so many aspects of early American culture, that source is Puritanism. The story starts with a fundamental shift in early Christianity. The original Jewish Sabbath was, and is, on the seventh day of the week, Saturday, commemorating God's rest at creation. Early Christians, however, began to meet on the first day of the week, Sunday, which they called the Lord's Day in honor of Christ's resurrection. For the first few centuries, this Lord's Day was a day for worship, but not necessarily a day of total rest in the Jewish sense. The Roman Empire didn't recognize it, so most Christians still had to work. Everything changed in 321 AD when Emperor Constantine, the first Christian emperor, issued a civil decree ordering that Sunday be a day of rest for Roman citizens. This was the first Sunday law, but the real architects of the American Sunday were the 17th century Puritans of New England. The Puritans were devout, intense, and believed the Reformation hadn't gone far enough. They wanted to build a society based entirely on the Bible. And when they looked at the 10 Commandments, they saw the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work. The Puritans developed a theology called Sabbatarianism. They argued that the principle of the Sabbath 1 day in 7 for holy rest was a permanent, moral law from God, but they believed that. In the Christian era, the specific day had been transferred by apostolic authority from Saturday to the Lord's Day, Sunday. Therefore, for the Puritans, Sunday was the new Christian Sabbath, and they believed it must be observed with the same, or even greater, strictness than the Jewish Sabbath. This wasn't just a day for church. It was a day for God. From sundown Saturday to sundown Sunday, any work was forbidden. Any frivolous play, entertainment, or vain pursuits were forbidden. Travel was forbidden. Laughing too loudly was frowned upon. It was a day for worship, Bible reading, and quiet, sober contemplation. And they wrote these prohibitions directly into their legal codes. These colonial laws, supposedly bound in blue paper in some traditions, hence the name, became known as Blue Laws. In 1653, the New Haven Colony's Blue Laws, for example, forbade all servile work and seasonable walking in the streets or fields, sporting, swimming, idly sitting in the streets. or profane discourse. These laws were designed to enforce a specific and very strict theological worldview on the entire population. This Puritan-born idea of a legally enforced, quiet, non-commercial Sunday became the undisputed status quo for most of American history long after the Puritans themselves faded. Throughout the 18th, 19th, and well into the 20th century, Sunday blue laws were a fact of life in almost every state. While the most extreme Puritan restrictions on frivolous walking disappeared, the core commercial and entertainment prohibitions remained strong. In a typical American town in, say, 1950, you simply could not go to a department store on a Sunday. You couldn't buy a car. You couldn't go to the hardware store. The post office was closed. Banks were closed. In many places, it was illegal for a theater to show a movie or for a professional sporting event to be held. This tradition was upheld by a powerful coalition, religious groups, Protestant organizations, like the Lord's Day Alliance founded in 1888, lobbied furiously to protect these laws, seeing them as essential for preserving the Christian character of the nation and protecting citizens from the incessant toil of a 7-day work week. Labor movements, early labor unions also, for different reasons, supported Sunday closing laws. They saw them as a crucial victory for workers' rights, a state-guaranteed day of rest that protected employees from being forced to work 7 days a week by factory owners. This alliance of religious moralists and secular labor advocates created a powerful political bloc that kept the blue laws on the books for decades, long after the Puritan theology that birthed them had faded from the mainstream. The closed Sunday was simply part of the American way of life. So, what happened? How did we get from the closed Sunday of the 1950s to the 24/7 brunch and buy Sunday of today? The war against the blue laws was fought on 3 main fronts in the second half of the 20th century. Front 1, the legal battle, religious pluralism. The first major challenge came not from atheists, but from other religious groups. Jewish merchants, in particular, were disproportionately harmed. They observed their Sabbath on Saturday, closing their businesses, as required by their faith. But then the blue laws forced them to close again on Sunday, leaving them with only 5 business days a week, while their Christian competitors were open for 6. They argued, quite reasonably, that this was a form of economic discrimination and a clear violation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. This challenge reached the Supreme Court in 1961 in a landmark case, McGowan v. Maryland. In a surprising decision, the court upheld the blue laws, but it did so by performing a brilliant and crucial legal maneuver. Chief Justice Earl Warren argued that while the blue laws originated for religious Puritan reasons, they had, over time, evolved. He ruled that their primary purpose was no longer religious, but CQ_L_ER_. The state, he wrote, had a valid secular interest in providing a uniform day of rest for all citizens, promoting public health, and providing a respite from the normal pressures of the work week. This was a pivotal moment. The blue laws survived, but their theological foundation was cut out from under them. They were now just a day of rest law, which made them far more vulnerable to the next and most powerful attacker. Front 2. The economic battle, consumer capitalism. If the McGowan decision was the first crack, consumer capitalism was the bulldozer. In the post-World War II boom, a new America was being built, an America of suburbs, highways, and the quintessential cathedral of consumerism, the shopping mall, as retailers and corporations grew. They looked at the closed Sunday with greedy eyes. They saw the single greatest, untapped reservoir of consumer leisure time in the entire week. Sunday was the day families were together, free from work and school. What if they could shop? The economic pressure was immense. Corporations, mall developers, and supermarket chains began to openly defy the blue laws. They would open on a Sunday. Police would come and issue them a small fine, maybe $250. And the store would pay it as a simple cost of doing business, having made tens of thousands of dollars in profit that same day. They also began a massive lobbying effort in state legislatures, arguing that blue laws were anti-business, anti-consumer choice, and were costing the state millions in potential tax revenue. Front 3. The cultural battle, entertainment, and the NFL. At the same time, the culture of leisure was changing. Americans didn't just want to rest, they wanted to be entertained. And the greatest force in American entertainment was professional sports, particularly the NFL. The NFL, which had always played its games on Sunday, transformed in the 1960s and 70s from a regional sport into a national obsession, a quasi-religious ritual in its own right. Millions of Americans now spent their Sunday afternoons not in quiet contemplation, but in a state of high energy, communal excitement, often with beer and gambling, all broadcast directly into their living rooms. The NFL's success culturally redefined what Sunday was for. It was no longer just for God or for quiet rest. It was for leisure, excitement, and commerce advertising. This, combined with the rise of movie theaters opening on Sundays, normalized the idea that Sunday was a day for fun and spending money. The old Puritan Sabbath stood no chance. The combined forces of religious pluralism, consumer capitalism, and mass entertainment simply overwhelmed it. One by one, state legislatures, under pressure from both businesses and voters who just wanted to shop, repealed their blue laws, starting in the 1970s and accelerating through the 80s and 90s. Today, the blue laws are all but dead. They exist only as strange, toothless relics. In New Jersey, you still can't buy furniture or electronics in Bergen County on a Sunday. In Maine, most car dealerships are closed. In Indiana, you can't buy a car from a dealership on Sunday, and in many states. You'll still find blue laws that restrict the hours for alcohol sales. For example, no alcohol sales before noon on Sunday, a last nod to church errors. But the war is over. Capitalism won. The consumer won, the NFL won, the brunch culture won. Sunday is now, for all practical purposes, just a Saturday with better brunch specials and more football. The only widespread reminder of the closed Sunday isn't a law. It's a corporate policy. The enduring success of Chick-fil-A, a company that willingly forsakes billions of dollars in revenue to close all its stores on Sunday based on the founder's explicit religious beliefs, is a fascinating cultural counterpoint. It proves that the idea of a day apart still resonates with millions. And this brings us to the great, lingering debate: what was gained and what was lost? On the one hand, the death of the blue laws was a clear victory for personal liberty and religious pluralism. A secular, diverse society has no business enforcing the specific holy day of one particular religion. The Jewish merchant, the Muslim family, the atheist, the agnostic all are now free to live, work, and shop on Sunday as they see fit. That is a clear win for freedom. But on the other hand, did we lose something profound? We live in a 24/7 hustle culture, addicted to our phones, always on, always available for work, always consuming. The blue laws, for all their theological rigidity, enforced a communal rhythm of rest. They created one day a week where the entire machinery of commerce and labor actually stopped. A day that was, by default, given over to family, community, faith, or simple, quiet being, rather than doing or buying. We fought a war to win the right to buy anything at any time, and in doing so, we may have lost the protected space to do nothing at all. So this is the debate I leave with you. Was the death of the blue laws a necessary liberation from an outdated, puritanical, and discriminatory legal system? Or was it a tragic loss of a shared, protected cultural rhythm of rest, a final surrender of communal well-being to the relentless demands of 24/7's consumer capitalism? Did we trade something sacred for something convenient, and was it a good trade? Let me know your thoughts, respectfully, in the comments below. If you found this deep dive into the forgotten history of the American Sunday fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the hidden stories behind our modern world. Thanks for watching.